I'm Brett Angel, and I'm the Senior Exhibitions Preparator at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. For this talk, I'm going to cover the extensive mannequin modifications required for the 2019 Ndebele exhibition. This showed both traditional and contemporary Ndebele costumes, and Catherine Gunch was our curator, and Joel Thompson was the conservator for this project that I worked with. As you can see from the previous images, brass rings were featured prominently in the women's costumes. We decided to make actual brass rings for this exhibition. I believe I made about between 60 and 70 rings, both for the ankles and the neck itself. So I started by annealing the brass rods that were selected to use for the rings. You can see that on the left. And that, of course, is to make them pliable, to pull them around the form that you see here. Well, this is a very low-tech procedure. It worked very well and took the better part of one day to fabricate them all. I made the links longer than they needed to be so that it was easy to pull them around the wooden form. Here's the finished, very rough form with the extra parts extending past the circumference of the ring. On the left, you see the rough, unclipped, scorched lengths, and on the right, the excess lengths were cut off. After clipping, I then put each one in a parrot vise to realign the ends so that it looks like a single ring again. Here I'm taking the grinder with a flap disc to quickly finish the top and bottom portions of the ring, removing any scorch marks and metal marks. And here we are with that step completed. And then a final polish with steel wool to give it a shiny, smooth surface overall. So on the left are the finished rings, and on the right, there they are in their kind of more rough state. After the polishing was finished, I stored them in sealed bags until they could be put onto the mannequins. This was all very last minute, which is probably not a surprise to any of us. So there was not adequate time to seal them with any kind of clear coat. So we wore gloves to keep them clean and kept them in bags until the actual installation time. Because the rings are brass, the accumulation of them obviously created a significant amount of weight. We didn't want the weight of the rings pushing down on the lower beaded cuffs, which are actual objects. So I made tabs on the bottommost ring that screwed into the mannequin itself. The mannequins are from MD Studios, and the model is Sintensi, and they're made out of acrylic. And I have to say, for the amount of cutting and drilling and refabricating and reattaching, that these were just absolutely fantastic. So I highly recommend them for anyone else that has to really Frankenstein together a mount. Catherine, our curator, consulted local Ndebele folks to determine what an appropriate color would be. Would we need to paint them? Would we need to cover them with some type of material? In the end, it was decided that a literally black-colored mannequin would be the most appropriate and respectful. In order to be able to put the rings on the mannequin, I had to literally cut the feet off so the rings could be passed over the ankles. That's what you're seeing here, that first initial cut. Here are the countersunk holes. The bolts will eventually go through the heel of the foot and into the ankle. On the left, you can see the threaded brass inserts that will take the bolt on the right. And then here I am attaching the feet and securing the bolts. And here we see the finished look before the mannequin actually gets dressed. Please notice in this picture too the space between the beaded cuffs. The legs had to be intentionally spaced apart, otherwise the cuffs would have been bunching up and rubbing on each other. So as you can see here, there's actually a little bit of space between the cuffs on the bottom, which are the actual objects. And so had we not spaced the legs, those would have been just literally bumping into each other. So in order to do that, here we are with more amputation, unfortunately. You can see on the right, another bracket is set into the mannequin. Here I used a jigsaw to make the cut. The bracket was slotted so that the leg, once it's attached, could have adjustability and be able to move back and forth. Here are the brackets in the body and the leg bracket joined together. On the left, I'm showing you how the bracket can be adjusted by sliding it back and forth in the slots before we lock it down. And on the right is the finished leg attached. And so again, you can probably notice how it can move to the left or the right. On the left is the mannequin then before it gets dressed, and on the right, the fully dressed mannequin. So as you can see, you'd be none the wiser of all the modifications that are going on underneath. Finally, I wanted to show you a really quick, radically altered mannequin. On the left is the finished dressed mannequin, and on the right is the cut-up mannequin. So as you can see, large portions were removed to fit the petite costume. Notice how thin the breastplate area is cut, and yet it is still quite strong. Again, this is the Intensi mannequin, Sape type, made out of acrylic. I also had to cut away a portion of the torso length and then reattach it with clips. So that's what you're seeing on the inside. That's what those brass clips are. That's reattaching the upper part of the torso to the lower part. And then finally, this is a detail just to show you that all the finishing was done again with a grinder and a flat disc. So you can see how easy it is to radically alter these mannequins, and then they still hold up. So I'm quite impressed, I have to say, with this particular mannequin type.
Brett Angel, how often are you asked to recreate ornaments and design components for costumes or other?
That was really the first time. I mean, often the MFA-Boston has a huge costume collection and accessory collection, and so often I'm just making mounts to help stabilize or have some way for the accessories to attach. But this is probably the first time that I actually made finished pieces that were going to be visible as accessories. So it was a new first for me.
And then really quickly, do you know who the maker is of those acrylic mannequins?
The brand is MD Studios, and if you're in the US or on the East Coast, we get them from New York City from a place called DK Display Corp. They have a website, so you can get them locally if you're in the US.
Okay.